Man, I started out yesterday's show by saying the same thing, that this is a video that I felt was really necessary to go out there and make, but it's one that I think is gonna make y'all pissed off, especially if you're a fan of the Ottawa Senators. You see, we've been making videos this entire time, talking about the Golden Knights, talking about the Panthers and the finals, that's kicking off all on Saturday, right? We have ourselves a very fun finals matchup ahead of us, but I wanted to take some time to talk today about the captain of the Vegas Golden Knights. A guy who has been performing very well, but who has been slowed down by injuries the past little while, and who's definitely on the older side of things. Now, you know from the title, you know from the thumbnail, you know who we're talking about. Today we're talking about Mark Stone, 31-year-old right winger, 6'4", 220, signed till the end of 2027, making $9.5 million a year. He's got a full no-move clause, and he is the captain of the Vegas Golden Knights, a title he has held since 2020. Now, we all know that Stone is a very talented piece. He is a point-per-game player when he's at his best, a two-way defensively responsible beast at his worst. In this season, he only played 43 games. Last season, he only played 37 games. While he got points in those games, the overall health situation for Mark Stone was not the best, and there were so many months where he had time off. However, for a lot of Vegas fans, it's okay because right now he's in the postseason. He's got 15 points in 17 Vegas games. He's been doing everything that Mark Stone is capable of doing. But in today's video, I wanted to go out there and talk about the beginning. How Mark Stone even found himself in Vegas in the first place, and the entire story as to why that went down. Long story short, if you're a Senators fan, you're probably not gonna like this. The reason we're talking about Stone today is because we had ourselves an interview done by Pierre Dorion on the Cam Strick Podcast. Now, I'm pretty sure most of y'all are familiar with this. Andy Strickland does the show with Cam Jansen, and they do a lot of hockey coverage discussion. They have people on from the NHL world sharing stories and everything. And the other day, they had themselves the Ottawa Senators GM. There will be a link in the description if you want to go ahead and listen to the entire interview. It's a very nice listen. But the one individual clip from this interview that we're talking about was isolated and posted onto the Andy Strickland Twitter page. Now, I'll leave a link in the description to this Twitter video as well. So 2 links in the description, both the full episode as well as just a little snippet. But essentially, if you listen to what it is that Pierre Dorion talks about in this clip, is how there have been players, he names that there have been 2 in the past, over his tenure, that were very difficult to move. And Mark Stone was one of them. Now I'm going to go out there and paraphrase what it is that Pierre Dorion says on this interview. You could go ahead and listen to it if you want, but essentially Pierre Dorion says that his intention was to re-sign Mark Stone to an 8-year contract, but this didn't end up happening. Dorion went to Melnyk, who at the time, of course, was still alive, RIP to Eugene, and he told Eugene, we wanted to do this, Stone wants the 8-year deal, we're willing to give him the money, and Eugene asked him, hey, what's the downside to this sort of deal? Pierre Dorion explained that the philosophy is, if you sign a player to a long-term deal that is in the same age range as Mark Stone, at the end of the contract, years 7 or 8, maybe even 6 of this deal, you're probably not getting the most value out of the player because he is already a lot older, he'll still be making a good amount of money, and Eugene Melnyk essentially said, hey, we're going through a rebuild. So by the time years 6, 7, 8 rolls around, that's when we want to be contenders. That's when we want to have big money contracts given to the guys that we get in the draft now. The Stutzlas, the Tkachuks, the Norrises, all these young guys. By the time Mark Stone is in year 6, 7, 8 of his deal, this is when the Senators need to be contending. And so, with this conversation in mind, Pierre Dorion did not give Mark Stone that 8-year deal. In fact, in the clip he even says they were talking to about 5 teams about Mark Stone, but he kept on saying to Eugene, the return, it's not going to be like Erik Karlsson level worthy. It's not going to be a return where we're going to be excited and over the moon about it. These are just regular, maybe even sort of subpar returns compared to what the Sens got for Karlsson. So if you're forcing a hand at trading Stone away, you're not going to get the best value possible. Eventually, we know that Stone was indeed traded, and Pierre Dorion says that ultimately it probably was in Stone's best interest to get sent over to a team that was already contending like the Vegas Golden Knights. If you wanted to get the trade details back underway, here's the initial article from back when it was made. Vegas Golden Knights acquire Mark Stone from the Senators. The Golden Knights acquired Stone and Tobias Lindberg for Oscar Lindberg, Eric Bronstrom, and a second-round draft pick. that return is really not great. Like, admittedly, I know Erik Brannstrom is supposed to be a lot better than he was. Second-round draft picks can be very good, depending on what you use them on. And then the Lindbergh for Lindbergh swap, I mean, it's kind of funny that they have the same name, but not really too much value there either way. It's just kind of interesting because you have now a lot of people going out there and talking about this interview, like Derek Lee, for example. He does the Future Sickos stuff and 613 Sports. He says Pierre Dorion basically admits that Mark Stone was driven out by Eugene Melnyk. Pierre went to Eugene with an 8-year deal, and it was shut down. Then you have yourselves a whole bunch of other Senators fans talking about this idea, saying, darn it, man, what could have been if Eugene just allowed Pierre Dorion to do his job? What could the Senators have looked like had Mark Stone stuck around? Now, to be fair, things would have been a lot different. He wouldn't have had Erik Brannstrom, of course, but the other aspect of this entire thing is that the very next season, 2019-20, would have had a much different outcome when it comes to the draft and the results on paper. This is because Mark Stone is a very good player, and at this time frame, when he was traded, he was still as effective as ever. So you could assume that for the 2019-20 season, the Ottawa Senators probably would have had a much better record, and the Vegas Golden Knights, you could debate they could have had a worse record. This would have made things a lot more difficult when trying to assess where the 2020 NHL Entry Draft would have gone, because the Senators had 2 first-round picks their own, which eventually became 5th overall, Jake Sanderson, and they had the San Jose first, which was 3rd overall. They took Tim Stützle with that pick. And so, imagine Mark Stone was taken away from Vegas in 2019-20. Would it not be fair to assume that because the Vegas Golden Knights are not as good, they don't have Stone anymore, maybe the San Jose Sharks could have had a few more wins in there? That's just a guess. But if San Jose has a different standing in the 2020 draft lottery, they don't get that 3rd overall pick, and the Senators don't get Stützle. Same thing could be said other way around. If the Sens have Stone in 2019-20, they're not as bad as they are in reality, and maybe they get themselves a higher pick. That's not 5th overall, they don't take Sanderson, maybe they get 6th, 7th, or maybe 8th overall. They have to force themselves to get somebody like Jack Quinn, for example. And so there are a few what-ifs and alternate reality timeline multiversal scenarios that present themselves when you acknowledge that this was the possibility that the Senators had in their repertoire. They could have given Stone that 8-year deal. It was just shot down by Eugene Melnyk, and now you have yourselves the team as a result. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your opinions about this entire idea? What are your thoughts about Melnyk shutting this down? Do you agree with the philosophy that was presented in this time frame back in 2019? Hey, the Sens are trying to rebuild. They've got young guys, and when these young guys are at their peak, Mark Stone is going to be an anchor for us because we have him at $8 million, $9 million at 34, 35 years old. That's sort of the philosophy that Eugene Melnyk was thinking about when he pretty much shut down the extension, but I want you to tell me in the comment section below, is that a valid point of view in your opinion? Would you rather have had the Senators sign Stone, keep him around for as much time as you would have had him for, and allow his services to grow and mentor the other young guys on this team? I'm not going to go out there and say that the Sens are poised to be making a playoff comeback anytime soon, but they are on the way up. Things had changed over the past few years when you got Stützle, when you got Sanderson, when Brady Tkachuk formed into his own, and now you have other prospects in the pipeline that are doing well too. But from the Senators' perspective, what are your thoughts on this being the move? What are your thoughts on them forcing a trade to Vegas? And if you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan, how happy are you that Eugene Melnyk stepped in and didn't allow Pierre Dorion to give that 8-year deal? I don't think y'all are reveling too much about losing out on Erik Brannstrom and a second-round pick, but either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section, all your opinions regardless. Again, the comment section is your floor, but let me know your opinions about Mark Stone, Eugene Melnyk, Pierre Dorion. Again, links in the description are going to be to the full episode of the Cam Strick Podcast with Dorion, as well as just the isolated clip wherein he talks about Stone and the extension process. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.